Welcome back to New Wave Syndicate. Today, we'll tackle Bernie Sanders, a powerful progressive organizer who challenged the status quo and finally gave hope to progressives worldwide that we are finally able to turn the neoliberal tide. So then, how did it happen? How did it happen that from mass rallies for Bernie, we ended up with a candidate like Joe Biden? And on top of that, we gained nothing, as the Democratic establishment shifts to the right and blames the left wing on their loss of the Senate. Let's find out, shall we?
The pharmaceutical industry, over the last several decades, has spent billions of dollars on lobbying and campaign contributions. They buy Congress. We will, in fact, move to a Medicare for all, single-payer system, quality, comprehensive care for all. Almost all of the wealth and much of the income is going to the top 1%. And our job together is to change that reality.
Listen to the needs of women, listen to the needs of the immigrant community, listen to the needs of workers, listen to what's going on with regard to climate change.
We urgently need to combat the epidemic of violence against women on the streets and in the homes of America.
The answer to how we got so popular and how we also lost is the same. It was Bernie Sanders. Already in 2016, the left-wing voters felt disenfranchised and disappointment with Barack Obama's time as president. He prosecuted many whistleblowers, the numbers greater than those punished by the law under all U.S. presidential administrations combined. Guantanamo Bay wasn't closed like he promised. He extended Bush's tax cuts, increased the number of wars from 2 to 7, making him the biggest war hawk president in the post-World War II era. The faults are too numerous to name. It was only natural that the left wing wasn't satisfied, that this Democratic president simply didn't deliver, that they needed a better alternative to express their desires. So then, when all seemed like it's doom and gloom, came a senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. His record was very progressive. He spoke out against homophobia in the military in the 90s. At the same time, when Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Joe Biden were avowed the idea that marriage can only be between a man and a woman, he voted against the Iraq War, which has brought death to 100,000 civilians. Which, by the way, Biden had no problem voting for. He campaigned on Medicare for all, to implement a system like in European countries, to do away with the private insurance systems where one accident could result in the bankruptcy for so many Americans. Most importantly, though, he campaigned to end money in politics by opposing Citizens United and not accepting money from super PACs. He seemed like the perfect candidate, a light at the end of the tunnel, someone to finally fix the United States and make it a progressive, modern nation that every American can be proud to be a part of. No surprise then, when he came to prominence in 2016, he inherited and built up a huge momentum for the progressive base. When the Democrats were retreating to the right over the last decade, he was very left in comparison. He seemed like the exact cure that Uncle Sam needs to survive.
However, precisely due to his popular mass appeal, he was targeted by the DNC. The primary, with its huge number of superdelegates, was rigged in favor of Hillary Clinton, a far less progressive and far more corporate candidate, whose only attribute, which she frequently emphasized, was that she was a woman. And while we don't deny that the first woman president is, without a doubt, a huge milestone, first we must ask, what sort of person is she? Yes, she's a woman, but she's a woman that supported policies, values, and practices that harmed the greater masses, just like all the other men that were ever in office. What we want is a president who is also a progressive, anti-war, pro-Medicare for all candidate who genuinely wants to make this country better in terms of a social policy and care for its people. Hillary Clinton does not represent me. She does not represent the vast majority of women in this country, because someone who is going to send Americans to war, who is going to represent Wall Street interests and will repress any meaningful change for the people, is not the woman that represents me or the rest of the masses.
After that, what did Bernie do? Did he publicly try to rectify what happened? Did he denounce the DNC and Hillary Clinton? Did he use his wide coalition to start a separate movement? Or did he at least pressure Hillary into adopting very progressive policies, which could outmaneuver Donald Trump's populism from the left?
I think the Secretary is right. And that is that the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too. Me too.
You know?
No, he surrendered. He refused to address the rigging. He denounced the scandal regarding Hillary's emails. He surrendered and went touring, doing campaign rallies for Clinton and Kaine. He did more than she did and even brought in a larger crowd. The thanks that he got was that after she lost to a TV game show host, she blamed him for her loss. So naturally, you'd expect Bernie to have quit the party and denounce Hillary Clinton's baseless accusations. Well, did he do that? Of course not. He surrendered. He stayed in the Democratic Party, and his supporters, rather than organize for an alternative, also stayed, in the hopes that if they primary progressives, then slowly but surely, they'll be able to change the Democratic Party from within, to then deliver a solid blow to the Republicans in 2020. So, 3 years went by, and we get an announcement.
Together, you and I and our 2016 campaign began the political revolution. Now it is time to complete that revolution and implement the vision that we fought for.
Bernie Sanders is running again, with a newly found vigor and as strong as ever, amassing a large support among progressives, wanting change, wanting to see Trump gone, who, by the way, turned out to be just another Republican drone. On every poll, Bernie consistently beats Trump by bigger margins than his primary opponents. He wins the first few primaries, beating everyone, including Joe Biden. But when Super Tuesday came around, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar dropped out after receiving a phone call from Obama instructing them to endorse Biden. Elizabeth Warren did her part by staying in the race to siphon away progressive votes away from Bernie. Now his sole opponent was Biden, who was struggling to win the first few primaries. He now saw a boost in his support thanks to that little stunt. It was a betrayal and shady tactics.
Joe Biden is a friend of mine. Joe Biden is a decent guy. What Joe has said is if I win the nomination, he'll be there for me. And what I have said, if he wins the nomination, I'll be there for him.
And what did Bernie do after that? He surrendered. He consistently, throughout his campaign, refused to delve deep into Biden's atrocious record. He kept calling him his friend, even with that stunt. It was still possible to win if only Bernie doubled down rather than cower. If he had drawn a strong, significant progressive line between him and Joe Biden, a win was likely. And this isn't a baseless foresight speculation. Bernie was told by his staffers to attack hard, go strike Biden where it hurts, but he refused. He largely gave Biden a pass, while just occasionally trading jabs with Mike Bloomberg. This paved the way for Biden to unify moderates in South Carolina, and put him on the way to being the final winner. In all fairness, it wasn't just Bernie. A lot of his staffers in 2020 were career opportunists. Suffice to say, this resulted in his failure to become the nominee. So in light of these scandals, this corruption and disappointment, what then did Bernie Sanders do? He surrendered. He refused to use his leverage of having a huge progressive base to twist Biden's hand into giving him concessions of any nature. As Biden was telling voters how proud he was to have beaten a socialist, Bernie was campaigning for him. We knew that we wouldn't get everything, but at least we would have gotten something. Instead, we got nothing. In fact, we got worse than nothing. For those who were clearly disappointed and couldn't muster the thought of voting for Biden after seeing this, Bernie just stood by Biden, told his supporters that they would be irresponsible not to vote for Biden. This was a slap in the face to all progressives, to anyone who held out hope to change the system from within, to have our own populist movement. Bernie is now facing the consequences and repercussions of his betrayal. Any hope for a third chance has been diminished as he's failed his supporters in the races. He deserves the full ire of scrutiny. Whatever errors he committed in 2016 should have been rectified in 2020. He was told to rectify them, but he ultimately refused. When being told by his staffers to attack Biden, he kept calling him his friend. This idea that you could change the Democratic Party from within has categorically failed, and Bernie has killed it. For 4 years prior to the 2020 election, he could have started a new movement. He could have held rallies, which would have amassed tens of thousands of spectators in every state. He could have finally built enough momentum to strike a fear into the hearts of corporate Democrats, and only concede if they agreed to the vast majority of his progressive agenda. But guess what? He didn't do that. He surrendered again. During that time, we could have organized. We could have created a real political opposition, but instead we waited like lemmings, hoping that 2020 will be our year. It wasn't. And the man who killed that potential is Bernie Sanders himself. This is exactly why we need a third party. Thousands of people attended Bernie's rallies, beating all records. Let's run our popular candidates. Let's build the movement. Sure, we have to start from the beginning, whereas if Bernie didn't cower, we would already have an established base. But this is the only way to win within the system.
We didn't win this election. We lost, and we lost badly. But the game isn't over. Despite not reaching 5%, it doesn't mean that we won't in the future, and this is why. Now, straight away, we need to build up resistance via third party. Not everyone fell in line to support the establishment, whether blue or red. So let's build on that. Don't let people trick or even gaslight you into believing that change can only come from reforming the Democrats. We tried that from 2016 onwards, and it led to the establishment to move more right, not more left. And you know what the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You cannot move Biden left. You cannot reform the Democrats from within. We tried that on 2 different occasions, and both times we lost. At this point in time, you've got nothing to lose but your chains, so you might as well start organizing right now. For a viable third party, the hope is not going to come from the establishment, so act now. Let's all unite and fight through direct action. So we'll see you next time, where we will be discussing exactly that. Direct action.
Democrats make me wanna vomit. Liberals make me wanna hack. They love to talk like they are friends of you and me, and then every time they stab us in the back. Democrats make me wanna vomit. Liberals make me wanna hack. They love to talk like they are friends of you and me, and then every time they stab us in the back. Every time they stab us in the back.